Hi, welcome to another video for the part two of the series. Well, part one, I'm sorry, part one of the series. In last video, we went over integrating network and security components. In this video, we're just going to go over installing and configuring network load balancing. So let's actually get started with our first exercise, which is going to be installing the network balancing nodes. So what NLB is, and I've done another video on this, so this would be, you can watch them both, but what network load balancing is, it's just a feature in Windows, right? In Windows OS, and this service just balances the network traffic load, right? That's sent to the NLB cluster on a TCP/IP network. So what we're going to do to get started with this, so I don't harp too long on it, I'm just going to install the IIS first, Internet Information Service. All right, so let's see. Let me actually open this up. Right, next, next. Next, for this one, let's do, there it is. All right, next, next. Let's see, next. Next. All right, perfect. So we can actually install. Right, this may take a while to complete. So I'll put us on the other side of the install. So the install has completed. So we can actually go ahead and close this out, minimize this. I'm going to pretty much do the same on same steps as I follow for this one here. Let's see. Perfect. All right, so the install has completed, so we're actually going to open up PowerShell. There it is. Right, do that there. Let's see. Load balancer. Close all the feature. Perfect. And let's see why I went off here. Okay. Always something small. There it is. There you go. So absolutely try to go too fast. So now we see the installation of the network load balancer in progress, and it should be finished up in just a moment. All right. So it has completed. So we can now exit the PowerShell here. All right, perfect. So let me swivel over here. Pretty much do something, pretty much the same thing, right? Right. This time I'll make sure I get it right on the first go around. There it is. All right, perfect. Now just installing the network load balancer on here as well. All right, perfect. So that one has now completed. Now we're going to configure a new NLB cluster. And a virtual cluster is just a virtual combo of the resources of more than one computer on the network. So the augmentation of these resources in a virtual cluster, it offers enhanced reliability and scalability compared to limited features offered by the resources of a single server. So let's actually go ahead and excuse me, get started on our first cluster node. So let's actually, let me actually close this out. And should be available to us here. There it is. Perfect. Let me actually maximize the screen. All right, so let's expand this, and I don't let me expand. It's fine. All right, so we're just going to click create a new cluster. So let's see. Next. Perfect. So now we see the interface is available for the server for DMO1 is now displayed here. So we're actually going to select this one here, right? And now on the new cluster, let's see here. I'm going to keep everything default. And first, we're going to add something here. Over Alex. Right now for our subnet, that's exactly what it is. All right, perfect. So now we can do next. Got the new IP there, and we actually want it. Let's see. I'm gonna stay with the cast. Oh, before I even get there. All right, perfect. So we're good there. The port rules, that looks pretty good. Let's hit finish. All right, so now we see the cluster that we've just created, right? So now we're just going to configure the DNS, right? So now after creating the initial cluster that we have here, we're going to configure the DNS on the network to provide a host name to our IP address mapping that points to DMO1, or at least the DMO1 NLB or network load balancer. So to configure it, let's actually swivel over to DCO1. Hopefully that one is acting better than the DM. See. And it's here. All right. Perfect. Let's open here. Okay. This here. Let's see. Post. Perfect. I love it. All right. So it's just confirmed that we've successfully created the FQDN for the cluster mode, right? So now we're just going to exit here, right? And let's see. Actually, that does not close that for what I need. Okay. All right, so perfect. So now we see the new host record that's created, right? So now we're able to add a secondary node to our NLB cluster. So we can add servers to an existing cluster to augment the resources available with the cluster, right? So since we have administrative rights on the server, we're able to configure this. However, this is a prerequisite that's not applicable in case the configuration is done from a remote server. But yeah, we can, let me refresh it once more. All right, so now I'm just gonna add the second server to the cluster. So I'm gonna grow it by adding more servers to the cluster, and then I'm just gonna add the second one here. So let's swivel over back to SAO1 again. Let's open this back up. And then let's get here. All right, perfect. So I want to point out that we can see the details of the session, right? It should be able to extend, I guess not, maybe because we need to have more clusters, but nonetheless, the NLB manager, it shows us the details in the lower, what do we call it? So let's actually continue here. Load balancer to connect. Right. Perfect. So we see the connected status changes, right, to connected, and now it just shows us the cluster name and the IP and all of that jazz. We can actually hit finish here since we've now added an additional server to the cluster. So let's actually click here and add it host to the cluster. Okay, so let's do the one we're on now. Okay, and connect. See. Now let's go from here and just go right there. Connect. Keep that. Perfect. So also want to note that before I continue that the network load balancer manager, sometimes it can, give you some issues, but if you do disconnect, you just reconnect to the server. At least that's happened to me prior to recording. Now, the server, you'll notice an hourglass next to the secondary server that I added, the SAO1. And it just showed that it's in a pending state because sometimes it can take a while for the server to be operational. Look, there it is. So we're actually good to go there. So it's just added now SAO1 as another node in the console tree, right? So this indicates another host added to the cluster, right, that we needed. So now we have two servers on the cluster, and the pane here. So they both should say converged status. Let's see. Nonetheless, we have what we need. I'm not going to get too much into that, but we can actually go ahead and move forward here. So let's see. Actually, don't go out on me. All right, perfect. So now we're just going to examine the work of an NLB cluster. So it just, as I mentioned earlier, it manages traffic, right, for each host on the cluster by distributing the client requests as per the rules configured for the cluster, right? So the client request from a single client or from multiple clients. The host on the cluster receives a request and they're recorded according to the configuration rules specified for each of them. So now we're just going to study the work of an NLB cluster because it can help speed up the data transfer from the client to the server by requesting or routing packets of the same data through different hosts on the cluster. So let's actually swivel back to DMO1 to take a look. Oh, already on there. All right, perfect. Let me minimize this. Let's open up the file explorer. So let's go here, and there we go. And let's see that one. Let's edit. So it opens up in Paint, right? So we can take a look at the palette. The yellow. I believe I did an exercise like this before. I believe as far as I entered in the text here. Let's see. Do that here. All right, so I'm just going to add NLB test. Yes, I definitely did this before. Because one is going to show, like the one I'm creating, is going to show, and then I'm going to be able to click another one that's going to have it not show anything. But let's do it again. All right, perfect. So let's save it. Perfect. All right, so let's actually close that. close that. And let's actually open this up here. Oops, we always want to use that. Perfect. So let's actually go to the server website. Perfect. So NLB test, right? So it shows there. So it's exactly what we had. So I'm actually going to swivel back over to SAO1. Then we can open up the Explorer there. Okay. Good. Wow. Perfect. This one doesn't show. So there, as we can see, the bitmap image displayed here is different than the previous one we did because the NLB test text is missing from the image, right? So this just confirms that the default web page of the two servers, SAO1 and DMO1 on the cluster for PLAB, DMO1, NLB are now distinguishable from each other, right? So let's actually close this out. So we're going to test it out. So, but before we get to that, we're just going to configure and validate some port rules for NLB. So port rules for NLB controlling traffic, right? The management of working of the cluster. Any host added to the cluster after the first host automatically inherits the cluster port rules from the initial host, right? So the rules just specify the values for parameters, including the IP addresses, like the port range and the protocol of the operation. So I'm just going to configure some port rules, right? So there's two parameters actually, affinity and filtering. So let's actually swivel over to here and let's see, let's open up PowerShell. Perfect. So what happens is it just creates the NLB port under the C, which is obviously our local disk. So let's actually clear it out. Again, I love a clean window. Can't stress that enough. So let's do local drive, the folder here. We were just on a minute ago. And then this folder here, can't see anymore, but I should be typing right. And then we want that port there. Perfect. So let's see, what does it say? Directory name on the target. So we actually have a file. What? Actually, you know what? Let me, darn it. Let's do that again. Okay, so profile copy, that's what I want. All right, so now we can enter in the new command, right? Report. Okay. Where did I go wrong? Physical path. Okay. Nice. So, website. And report. Hmm. Let's see what's going on. So physical path should point to existing path, right? Okay. All right. So let's see where I wanted it to go. See here. It'll be port. Yeah, I don't have that. Oh, there it is. Okay, so what's the problem? All right, let's see. So physical path, where's the category, implement this on the website, argument acceptance, let's call it command. That's an issue here. Hmm. Mhm. I'm gonna try it one more time because I'm hard headed. Okay, let's figure this out. All right. So I was able to get everything situated, just had a just a small issue with the lab, but nonetheless, one noticed that the command it creates a new website, right? With a few specifications. The name is the NLB port, right? The ID is 2, the state has started, physical path binding 679 as far as the HTTP. So now we're just going to enter a um, new command here. Perfect. So I also want to notice that the command creates an inbound rule for the firewall on the NLB host. All right. All right. So actually, let me close this out. Let's swivel over to Windows. And there it is. So I'm just going to actually bring up the browser with those specifications for the DMO1. This browser here. Perfect. So we got the NLP test. Oh, nearly forgot. So we see it displayed there. That's all right because I think I said it just a moment ago. All right, so we're going to switch back over to DMO1. Actually, close this out. I'll minimize this. All right, so we can actually open up the network load balancing manager. All right, perfect. So let's see. There it is. Should be perfect. All right, so look at the cluster properties. Right, so let's see, port rules. Right, actually remove, and of course we're gonna perfect. Let's see. Okay, want it from 80 to 80. Both is good. Multiple hosts done. Spectral. Right, perfect. So, all right, now that we have it added, that's gonna add something else here. And let's see, both multiple, single, good. All right, perfect. We got 679 and we got the 80. All right, perfect, perfect. Now let's actually go back here. Waiting for it to finish. Okay, let's take a look at the host properties here. Port rules. And let's see if this one's good. What that is. Oh, it's not good. Well, it's okay. Perfect. This looks good. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's take a look at the network node balancing here. Okay, put this here. Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure they were going to stay in their current status, converge instead of converging. That just takes a bit of a second. But nonetheless, we can actually move forward to validate the port rules we've just set. So the port rules by default, it distributes the traffic load equally to load to all of the servers on the cluster. So until otherwise, we make any changes. But now we're just going to access another server cluster on the workstation, right? That verifies the images fed to the NLB cluster. Alternatively, by both the hosts on the cluster. So actually go to here. I haven't used this one yet. Let's do that. Yeah. Perfect. So we don't see the one without the NLB test. I didn't put anything here, right? So it's gonna actually refresh. Oh, okay. Didn't ask for that. So perfect. So now we see with the other web page, when I refresh, the NLB text appears. So this confirms that the web content is delivered alternatively by DMO1 and SAO1 through the NLB servers. Now we're going to validate the high availability of the cluster because it ensures that the high availability of the resources to various applications running on the cluster, right? So it just hosts the host emits and receives like a live signal from other hosts on the cluster. So if the hosts don't receive a live signal from any other hosts on the cluster, then it's a vibrant host just converge on the cluster to take on the load of the failed host. So what we're going to do is actually remove one of the servers from the cluster and analyze the effect of the same on the output. So I'm going to swivel back over to here. And then let's see. Actually, you know what? I'll just suspend it. I can't find what I'm looking for, but this will work. So fully suspend it. Perfect. All right, so let's go back here. And then let's see. I'm actually going to copy and paste. I'm going to close it out. Validation. Perfect. All right, let me refresh. Fresh, nothing. All right, so the NLB test this time doesn't appear on the image because the device is currently switched off. Therefore, any web content only comes from SAO1, which is the secondary node on the cluster that we have. But nonetheless, this brings us to the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did for installing and configuring the network load balancing. Again, this is not the only video that I've done this particular exercise. Just for a brief recap, we're going to do just for a brief recap, we're going to go over exactly what was done. We installed the NLB on the servers. We created the first NLB cluster node. We actually added a secondary node as well, or server to the cluster. Validated port rules after we configured them, and we checked out or validated the high availability of the cluster. So this was installing configuring network load balancing. On the next video, we're going to do a bit of performing firewall rule-based management. Thank you again for watching. Stay curious, stay secure.